Welcome to your deep dive. You sent us so much articles and videos, even some language learning resources, and it's all about hobbies. You're really ready to dig deep on this one.
You really are.
Yeah.
It seems like, from the looks of it, hobbies are. It's definitely something that everybody loves talking about all over the world. But what I find really interesting is that it's not just about, making a list of hobbies. It goes deeper into sort of the psychology of it all.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too. Like, why are we so fascinated by hobbies? Why do we spend all this time on these activities?
And what's the cultural significance?
Yeah, what's the cultural significance of it all? And I think that's what we're going to be able to unlock in this deep dive together.
Yeah, and maybe we can learn to speak the secret language of hobbies.
The secret language, I love that.
Oh, yeah.
So to kind of kick things off, I thought it was interesting how many of your sources pointed to the kind of like the global landscape of hobbies. Like, what are some of the activities that people do all over the world?
Right? Like football. That
Yeah.
seems to be something that everybody loves.
Yeah.
Unites millions of fans all over the world.
Yeah. Food is another one. Cooking and sharing meals.
Right.
That seems to be a common thread.
That brings people together.
Yeah. But then there are also hobbies that are much more culturally specific. And one example that you sent over was some information on Japanese tea ceremony.
Oh, yeah. Tea ceremonies are really interesting because it's not just about, brewing and drinking tea. It's very steeped in tradition and history and etiquette.
And symbolism.
And symbolism, yeah. So much more to it than just the act of drinking tea.
So it makes you think, like, if you were to travel to Japan and you were to participate in a tea ceremony, what would you learn about Japanese culture through that experience? Like,
Right.
what unspoken rules or values would you be able to observe? It's almost like you're, having this cultural immersion through this hobby.
Definitely. And it really highlights how hobbies are more than just leisure activities. They can be a gateway to understanding different cultures,
Yeah.
connecting with people.
On a deeper level.
Yeah,
On a deeper level.
absolutely. So before we get too far down that path, I did want to go back because your sources emphasized a lot on the why behind hobbies. Like, why are we so drawn to these activities? Why do we dedicate our time?
Right.
And clearly more than just fun, right?
Yeah. I mean, fun is definitely a big factor, but, the sources that you sent over point to all sorts of other motivations. For example, a lot of the language learning resources that you sent over emphasize how hobbies are a great way to connect with other people,
I can see that. I mean, just think about, when you meet someone new and you have those initial conversations, you're always going to ask them, what do you like to do in your free time?
Right.
It's just such a natural question to ask.
Yeah, it's like a natural icebreaker.
Yeah. And it
And
can,
it can lead to, you finding some sort of common ground or some shared passion.
and then you might even end up, joining a club or group or attending an event together.
Right. Hobbies can really bring people together, I think.
Yeah, they can. They can. And it's not, it's more than just small talk too.
Yeah.
You could end up forming really deep connections based on those shared interests.
Yeah. It's like, hobbies can be those invisible threads that connect us to other people who are like-minded.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also curious about, like, the personal benefits. Because, you mentioned things like stress relief,
Right.
personal growth, even skills development.
Yeah, I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. Hobbies can be really therapeutic. If you think about it, when you're engaging in something that you love,
Yeah.
you get to kind of escape from all of the stresses of daily life.
That's true.
You get to relax, you get to recharge.
Yeah, and focus on something you enjoy.
Exactly. And, I know for myself, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I can just dive into one of my favorite hobbies, I immediately just feel like,
Calmer. Yeah.
I can clear my head
Yeah.
and regain a sense of balance. And beyond stress relief, I think hobbies can also foster personal growth in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll challenge you to step outside of your comfort zone
Mm-hmm.
or learn a new skill,
Sure.
develop patience, develop perseverance.
And it's interesting because, if you think about something like a hobby that requires, meticulous attention to detail, like model building or calligraphy, you're learning focus, you're learning precision.
Mm-hmm.
And those are qualities that I think can benefit you in so many areas of life.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about, acquiring that skill or mastering a technique. It's about this, kind of building those character traits
Right.
that can help you grow as a person.
Exactly. And it actually brings us to another really interesting aspect, which is the language of hobbies.
Mm.
how we express our passions, how we communicate those experiences.
Right. And this is especially relevant, I think, for someone who's learning a new language,
Exactly.
because they need to know, how do I even talk about this?
Yeah, how do I talk about this in a way that other people will understand and I feel comfortable with? And actually, a lot of the resources that you sent, especially the AngVid ones, the Oxford Language Club,
Yeah,
they give some really practical tips about how to talk about hobbies.
that's right. Because we don't always want to just say like.
Right.
We want to be able to, have a little bit more variety in our language. And you mentioned earlier, it's right up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the phrases that came up.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
it just adds a little more color, has a little more personality.
I'd love to dive a little deeper into that phrase
Sure.
because
Okay.
it's right up my alley. What does that really mean? And can you give us some other examples of how we can use language to express our enthusiasm?
Yeah. So it's right up my alley basically means it aligns perfectly with your interests or your skills.
Oh,
Like you would naturally enjoy doing this and you might even be good at it.
I see.
So it's like saying, this is totally my jam.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, that is much more expressive than just saying, I like it.
Right.
So what are some other phrases that we can use to, kind of paint a more vivid picture when we're talking about our hobbies?
If you want to convey like a really deep passion, you could say, I'm really into,
Hmm.
or I'm absolutely hooked on.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're just starting out with something, you could use phrases like, I'm exploring,
Mm.
or I'm dabbling in.
Oh, I love that. I'm dabbling in.
Yeah.
So we have all these different phrases we can use.
Yeah, it's like having a toolbox
For toolbox.
full of, these linguistic tools
Linguistic tools. I love it.
that can help you express yourself.
And what's great is that, depending on your personality or how comfortable you are with the language, you can choose what works for you.
Right. You don't have to use big fancy words if you're not ready.
Right. You can start simple
Start simple.
and then kind of build up from there.
Exactly.
Now, one of the other points that came up in your sources, and I thought this was really interesting, especially for language learners, was, describing your progress.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a beginner at something, or you're intermediate, or you're an expert,
Right.
you're going to use different phrases to talk about that.
Exactly. And, those language learning resources really shine there because they give very specific phrases that you can use. So, for example, a beginner might say, I've just started.
Yeah. Or I'm still learning the ropes.
I'm still learning the ropes. Yeah, exactly.
But then someone who's maybe been practicing for a while, they might say, I'm getting the hang of it.
I'm making steady progress.
I'm making steady progress.
I'm improving every day.
I'm improving every day.
But then an expert might proudly proclaim, I've mastered.
I'm at the top of my game.
I'm at the top of my game. Exactly.
Wow. So language allows us to not only just express our enjoyment, but it lets us talk about our journey,
It does.
our growth.
Mm.
And it really just, kind of adds a whole other dimension to those conversations.
It does, yeah. It turns that simple statement like, I like to cook,
Yeah.
into this whole narrative.
It does. And that reminds me of I like to cook, because you sent all these examples of people talking about their hobbies in real life.
Right.
And we have transcripts from a bunch of different YouTube channels. So we have Easy English and Proactive English Practice.
Mhm.
We even have one from Sunshine English that sets up like a little role play exercise for you.
Oh, yeah.
So are you ready to dive into some real life hobby talk?
I am. Let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear it. I'm really curious to see what these real conversations sound like.
Okay, so let's start with one of the most simple phrases I like to. I mean, it's straightforward, but as we're going to see, it can really, be a jumping off point for deeper conversations.
Yeah.
So in one of the Easy English transcripts, someone just says, I like to cook.
Great.
And it's short and sweet. It gets the point across.
Yeah, it gets the point across.
Yeah.
And, the person listening might say, well, what kind of food do you like to cook? Or what do you enjoy most about cooking?
Right, exactly. So it opens up that conversation.
Yeah, it's like opening a door.
Yeah. And that's where those subtle language variations come in. Because in another Easy English example, someone says, I enjoy cooking because it's so much fun.
I like that.
It's still simple, but it adds that extra layer of personal feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If
Um,
somebody said that to me, I would definitely want to ask them more questions.
Yeah, and it creates that kind of shared enthusiasm,
Yeah.
which always makes conversations more interesting.
For sure. So it's really going beyond just stating the fact,
Right.
adding a little bit of personality to it.
Yeah, because it's so much fun.
Right, exactly.
It makes a big difference.
It's like the difference between, reading a recipe and then actually savoring a delicious meal.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, the recipe is just the basic ingredients. But when you add that personal touch, that passion behind it, that's what makes it special.
That's such a great analogy. It reminds me of all those cooking shows where you can just see the passion
Mm-hmm.
and they're so excited about what they're making.
And they're not just following the instructions, they're
Yeah.
putting their whole heart into it.
And you want to eat it.
Right, exactly. And just like with cooking, expressing your passion for your hobby can really inspire other people
Yeah.
to explore their own interests,
Usually.
to discover some hidden talent that they didn't know that they had.
Yeah. So it's contagious, that passion.
It is. It's contagious.
Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and look at the transcript from Proactive English Practice.
Okay.
This one features a bunch of different hobbies.
Oh.
And what I noticed was that the responses, they vary in length and how complex they are.
Go ahead.
So you have someone just saying, I like to cook, short, sweet, to the point. But then someone else, when asked about travel, they said, I enjoy exploring new places.
Ooh, nice.
So there's that subtle shift from like to enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add that exploring new places, which just gives us more information
It does. It does.
about why they love to travel.
It hints at a deeper motivation, you
Mm.
know. It's not just about going to new places. It's about that sense of adventure and curiosity.
It is.
Yeah.
And they're inviting us along on that journey
Yeah, yeah.
with them, you
Yeah.
know? It's not just, I like to travel. It's much more than that.
It's so much more.
So we see how even small changes in the words we use can say a lot about who we are.
Exactly.
Our values.
Like a secret code
a secret code, yes.
that reveals our inner landscape.
I love that. I love that. Now, we've been talking about all this enjoyment and passion, but I'm also thinking about, there are some hobbies that are really challenging or
Yeah.
require a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
How do we talk about those, in a way that conveys both the difficulty and the reward?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, I think the Engvid transcripts offer a good example.
Okay.
Because remember, one of the language learners said, among other things, I'm into learning English, but sometimes it may be not so easy and requires some efforts.
Yeah, they're not sugarcoating it,
No,
but they're still showing their dedication.
exactly.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that it's hard, but they're still committed to it.
Yeah,
And I think that's really inspiring
it is.
because it shows that true passion often involves overcoming those obstacles.
Right.
It's not always just about having fun.
It's about the journey.
It's about that sense of accomplishment that you
Yeah.
get when you finally,
Reach the goal.
reach the goal. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like climbing a mountain,
it is.
It's tough, it's demanding, but then when you get to the top,
That view,
that view, yeah, and that sense of achievement is just like incredible.
it's true.
Just unparalleled.
Now let's think back to those practical tips for language learners. Because you shared all these phrases and vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
and the transcripts show us how to actually use these in real conversations.
Yeah, we see it all come together.
So it's like going from theory to practice.
Exactly.
So, for example, Oxford Online English, they suggested using words like really or absolutely to emphasize our enjoyment.
Oh,
So instead of just, I like taking photos,
right.
I really like taking photos.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
I'm really into photography.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it just adds that extra level of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how, there are options for every level.
Mm.
Like you were saying earlier, start simple and then build up.
Yeah, start simple.
And we see that even a simple phrase like, it's so much fun can make a difference.
It can, yeah.
It's not always about using big words. It's about being genuine.
That's right. It's about finding your voice and expressing yourself authentically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, there's one more transcript I want to talk about from Sunshine English. This one's set up like a role play exercise specifically for language learners.
Oh, cool.
So it's simulating a real life conversation
Mm-hmm.
and practicing those questions that you always get in those, first meetings with someone.
Right, like what do you do in your free time?
What are your hobbies?
What are your hobbies? Exactly.
And it's a really good way to practice in a safe space,
Yeah, because those questions can be kind of intimidating when you're first learning a language.
Right.
So it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet.
Yeah, like a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, dress rehearsal, exactly.
And it's great because it actually uses all those tips we've been talking about.
Yeah, puts them all into practice.
I'm into, I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all in there.
Yeah, it's cool to see how those phrases fit into a natural conversation.
Now, one thing that struck me when reading through these transcripts
Yeah.
is how often the question, how did you get into that,
Oh,
comes up.
oh yeah, that's a good one.
It seems to be the key to unlocking the story behind the hobby.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's like saying, tell me more about yourself. I'm interested.
Yeah.
And those stories can be so revealing, you know.
They
They
can.
can give you insights into a person's values, their experiences, their cultural background even.
Yeah, and it really opens the door to deeper connection.
For sure. When you share your story, it creates that sense of vulnerability,
It does.
which can lead to trust and understanding.
So it's like peeling back the layers of the onion,
It is. It is.
getting to the heart of it all.
So the heart of the matter.
And those conversations can be so enriching for everyone involved.
They can. Yeah.
So, we've talked about so many different ways to talk about hobbies,
Hmm.
from simple phrases to more complex ones. But I'm wondering, how do these passions fit into a larger context, like culturally? Do our hobbies say anything about societal trends or values?
That's a great question. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay, let's go there.
which is all about, that connection between hobbies and cultural identity.
All right, I'm excited to explore that. So, we talked about, personal expressions of hobbies and the language we use. But now I'm really interested in this connection between hobbies and cultural identity. Like, do our interests actually reflect those larger trends?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You almost can see like cultural patterns through the hobbies that people are drawn to. Like, for example, a lot of your sources talked about how outdoor activities like hiking, camping, tend to be popular in countries that have these vast natural landscapes.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, does the environment shape our interests, or are we just naturally drawn to environments that kind of support the hobbies we already love?
Right.
It's like a chicken or the egg.
It is. It is.
But I see what you mean. It's hard to imagine, like, surfing being a big hobby in a country that has no coastline.
Right.
And then on the flip side, if you have all these, mountains and things, people are naturally going to want to climb them.
Right. And then you have some hobbies that are so deeply embedded in a particular culture that they almost become like synonymous with that national identity.
Right.
Like we were talking about before, Japanese tea ceremonies.
Yeah.
It's not just a pastime, it's a ritual. It's something that's been passed down for generations.
Yeah, and it really reflects those values of, harmony and respect and mindfulness.
Exactly.
It's like each sip of tea is just like steeped in centuries of tradition. It's really amazing. And then even within a single culture, hobbies can vary so widely
They can.
based on age or background, socioeconomic status, even personal values.
Yeah.
Like someone who, really values tranquility might, enjoy gardening or calligraphy, but then someone who loves adrenaline, they're going to be drawn to something totally different.
Right, like extreme sports.
Extreme sports, exactly.
Or competitive gaming.
Competitive gaming, yeah. So it's not just about the, like the national culture, it's about the individual and how they express themselves through their hobbies.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about that learner persona because they love absorbing all this information.
Yeah.
I bet they would find this connection between hobbies and a cultural identity really fascinating.
Oh, for sure. For sure. They'd be all about this. It's like, it's like a secret code waiting to be deciphered.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Like if you look at the hobbies that are popular in different cultures and subcultures, you can learn so much about, their values, their beliefs,
Right.
even their social dynamics.
It's like learning a whole new language.
It is.
But instead of words, we're decoding, the language of leisure.
The language of leisure, exactly.
And passion. So, we've been talking about hobbies this whole time.
Right.
But one question that came up in your sources was, what even is a hobby?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like, it seems so simple.
You think it's simple, but it's actually kind of nuanced.
It is.
Like, is it just anything we enjoy doing in our spare time? Or is there something more to it? And I think your sources give us some really good answers.
Yeah.
They say that a hobby, it's more than just filling our time. It should be something that we're really passionate about, something we do with purpose.
So it's not just about, like, watching TV.
Right. It's not passive.
Right.
It's about actively engaging in something that enriches your life.
That brings you joy.
That brings you joy. Exactly.
That challenges
That challenges you.
And I love that, it doesn't have to be something big or impressive.
Oh,
It
yeah.
can be, collecting stamps or
Yeah.
listening to music.
Or spending time with your pet.
Yeah. What matters is that it's something that you genuinely enjoy.
Hmm.
And that adds value to your life. And it makes me think about that language learner we talked about earlier, who talked about, the challenges of learning English, but also the rewards.
Right.
They turned what a lot of people might see as like a chore into a passion.
They did. They did. And that's a great example of the transformative power of hobbies. They can turn ordinary moments into something much bigger.
Into something special.
Exactly.
So I think, as we're wrapping up this deep dive into hobbies, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listener?
I would say the most important takeaway is that hobbies are more than just, leisure activities. They're a reflection of who we are, what we value, how we connect with the world around us.
Hmm.
They bring us joy, they challenge us to grow, and they help us connect with others who share those same interests.
And I think most importantly, they remind us that life is meant to be enjoyed,
It
to
is.
be explored.
With passion, with
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to our listener, I
Yeah.
want to leave you with this final thought. What hobby have you always been curious about,
Yeah.
but haven't tried yet? Maybe now is the time to just, step outside your comfort zone and discover something new,
Yeah.
because the world of hobbies is vast.
It is. It is. And there's something out there for everyone.
Happy hobbying.